When you think of classical music, which composers spring to mind? Beethoven, Mozart, Bach? But how many women composers can you name? Classical music has long been dominated by men, not because women weren't composing, but because they were excluded from the canon. The canon, from the Greek kanon, meaning rule, refers to the so-called timeless masterpieces that define an art form. In music, it was shaped in the 19th century, a time when women had few rights and little access to public life. That canon became deeply rooted through concerts, history books, and music education, rarely including women. As a result, many people have never heard a single piece of music by a woman composer, let alone know their names. Women like Cecile Shamanard, Ethel Smith, Auguste Holmes, Amy Beachch, Lily Boulanger, Luise Farank, Fanny Henzel, Clara Schuman, Amelia Meer, and many more. Over a series of short videos, we'll be sharing the stories of women composers, who they were, what they composed, and what they achieved in their lifetimes.
Luise Farank was a French composer, pianist, teacher, and music scholar. Farank was born into the famous family of French artists, the Dumont family, which included several women painters, although she herself preferred music. By her mid-teens, she was a pianist of concert standard and had already written many compositions. As a composer, Farank produced large bodies of piano and chamber music. She also wrote 3 symphonies and 2 orchestral overtures. In 1842, Farank was made a professor of piano at the Paris Conservatoire, one of the very few women to work there during the 19th century. Not only did she become one of the Conservatoire's most celebrated piano teachers, but she also campaigned for and received equal pay with her male counterparts. Along with her husband, Astrid Farank, who was a fellow musician, flautist, music publisher, and music scholar, Farank researched and edited large amounts of Baroque French harpsichord music, which she also performed along with her students, making her one of the first musicians to research and play early music in 19th century Paris.
Auguste Holmes was born in 1847 and died in 1903. She was a French composer from an Irish family known for her large-scale works. Her works were performed in France, and she even gained celebrity status in Paris, where she hosted her own salon. Holmes knew the challenges she faced as a woman composer in the 19th century and boldly declared, "I must show the males what I'm made of." Early in her career, she even published some works under a male pseudonym, Hermann Zenter. But later, as the sole beneficiary of her father's fortune, she published under her own name and was the owner of her works. Holmes came second in the inaugural City of Paris competition in 1878 with the programmatic symphony Lutèce, her first major work. She was later commissioned to write the Ode Triomphale for the Exposition Universelle as part of the 1889 celebration of the centennial of the French Revolution, a piece so grand it required 1,200 musicians. Holmes's music, including symphonies, operas, and symphonic poems like Irlande, composed in 1882, and Poulagne, composed in 1883, often carried powerful political and patriotic messages.
Fanny Henzel was a German composer, pianist, and conductor. She was born into the wealthy Mendelssohn family, and her brother was the famous German composer Felix Mendelssohn. Unlike in the case of Felix, the Mendelssohn family strongly discouraged Henzel from pursuing a public career as a professional musician. Despite this, she wrote a vast quantity of music, numbering almost 500 compositions, including piano pieces, chamber music, cantatas, and over 250 songs. During her lifetime, Henzel was most well known for directing the influential Berlin music salon, the Sonntagsmusiken, from her home. All of her life, Henzel struggled with the question of whether or not she should publish her compositions. Her father Abraham Mendelssohn and her brother Felix strongly discouraged her from doing so, whilst her mother Leah Mendelssohn and her husband, the German artist Wilhelm Henzel, pushed her to do so. Finally, Henzel decided to start publishing her works during the last year of her life, before she died very unexpectedly of a stroke whilst conducting a rehearsal at the age of only 41.
Cecile Shamanard was born in 1857 and died in 1944. She was a French composer and pianist who wrote and published hundreds of compositions. Most of her works are piano pieces. However, she also composed a suite d'orchestre, a comic opera, a symphony, a ballet symphony Kleerhau, her Concertstück, and a concertino. She toured extensively in Britain across a 30-year span, becoming a favourite of Queen Victoria, who awarded her the Diamond Jubilee Medal in 1897, and later became president of the British Society of Women Musicians in 1913. In the US, Chamanard's music inspired so much passion that hundreds of Chamanard music clubs were founded. Chamanard conducted a tour in 1908, performing across several states. She also performed at the White House for President Teddy Roosevelt. In Europe, she performed her compositions widely and even conducted the orchestra for performances of Kleerhau and Concertstück in Switzerland in 1894 and in France in 1895, making her one of the first women to conduct an orchestra in Europe. Chamanard was also an astute businesswoman and would be regarded by today's standards as a modern-day influencer. She had her own perfume line, appeared on cigarette cards, and even promoted pianos.
Amelia Meer was a German composer, pianist, and sculptor. Although she showed much musical talent from a young age, it was not until her father died, when she was 28, that she was able to gain the personal freedom and financial independence through a large inheritance to pursue music. She then studied composition with the well-known German song composer Karl Löwer, and then toured and performed extensively throughout Europe. At a time when most women composers focused upon writing small-scale genres, particularly piano works and songs, Meer instead focused upon writing large-scale works. She wrote 8 symphonies, an opera, many orchestral overtures, and a piano concerto. She also wrote piano music, songs, and chamber works. She is commonly regarded as the most prolific woman composer of the Romantic period. Her works were often performed during her lifetime and were also very well received. She was commonly referred to as the female Beethoven.
Ethel Smith was born in 1858 and died in 1944. She was an English composer, conductor, and author. She wrote and published a wide range of works: 2 symphonies, 6 operas, a mass, chamber music, and songs. Her opera, Die Wald, made history in 1903 as the first by a woman to be staged at the New York Metropolitan Opera. She was also the first woman composer to have an opera staged at Glyndebourne in 2022. But Smythe wasn't only a composer, she was a passionate suffragist. In 1910, she joined the Women's Social and Political Union and focused on campaigning for women's rights. In 1911, she composed a suffragist anthem entitled The March of the Women, her most notable work, which she dedicated to Emmeline Pankhurst. Her opera, The Wreckers, also carried feminist themes, exploring the power of women finding their voice. Beyond her music, Smythe was known for her boldness, openly discussing her bisexuality in a time when it was scandalous. In 1922, she became the first woman to be awarded a damehood for her contributions to music and publication, becoming Dame Ethel Smythe.
Clara Schuman was a German composer, pianist, and teacher. She came from a musical family. Her mother was also a pianist, and her father was the famous piano teacher Friedrich Wieck. Under her father's training, and by her late teens, she'd become one of the most famous concert pianists in Europe. As a composer, she wrote a large body of piano music, songs, and also her piano trio and a piano concerto in A minor, which she began at the age of only 13. In 1840, she split with her father, however, in order to marry the German composer Robert Schumann. Clara's father disapproved of Robert so strongly that the couple had to go to court in order to be given permission to marry without his consent. During their musical marriage, Clara championed Robert's music, which was not well known at the time, extensively, and they also had 8 children together. After Robert died in 1856, Clara Schuman revived her piano career, becoming once again one of the leading concert pianists of the time. She also taught extensively, and in 1878 she was made head of piano at the Hochkonservatoire in Frankfurt.
Amy Beachch was born in 1867 and died in 1944. She was an American composer who began her career as a pianist, making her debut with the Boston Symphony Orchestra in 1883. Following her marriage to Dr. Henry Harris Aubrey Beachch, she shifted her focus to composition, creating both grand works like her Mass in E-flat in 1892 and Violin Sonata in 1896, as well as her popular art songs. By the end of her career, she had composed and published over 300 works. After her husband's death in 1910, Beachch returned to performing, this time showcasing her own compositions on European tours until the onset of World War I. Beachch's music had a profound impact on the development of American classical music. In fact, she was the first American woman to have a symphony performed by a major orchestra. Her Gaelic Symphony premiered with the Boston Symphony Orchestra in 1896, and in 1900 she performed as a soloist in her piano concerto with the same orchestra. Beachch also co-founded and was the first president of the Society of American Women Composers in 1925.
Lily Boulanger was a French composer. Despite dying tragically young at the age of just 24, she had a profound influence upon French music. Born into a musical family in Paris, her mother was a singer, her father a composer, and her sister Nadia Boulanger would become one of the most famous female conductors and renowned composition teachers of the 20th century. Sadly, Lily Boulanger became ill when she was still a very young child, suffering at first from bronchial pneumonia, which became chronic intestinal tuberculosis. She suffered many flare-ups from this throughout her short life and was almost constantly ill. Despite her frail health, she made musical history in 1913 when she won France's famous composition competition, the Prix de Rome, or Rome Prize, for her cantata Faust et Hélène. After winning the competition, she spent time at the French Academy, the Villa Medici, in Rome. Lily Boulanger left a remarkable body of musical works, which include piano pieces, songs, and several large-scale orchestral and choral compositions, including several psalm settings, which were influenced by her devout Roman Catholic faith.